Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
President Trump brought Scott Gottlieb in. President Trump took $1 million from Pfizer and then appointed a guy who essentially was a Pfizer lobbyist. He was a business partner of Pfizer to run the agency. And then he, of course, made $88 billion for Pfizer on one vaccine and then left to join Pfizer's board. That's not draining the swamp. That is the swamp. And you know, President Biden is the same thing. I know Pete Buttigieg. I like Pete Buttigieg. He's a friend of my family's. My son campaigned for him, was part of his campaign last time around. So, and I like him, but I know I can tell you with an almost certainty that he did not go to DOT saying, oh, darn it, I'm going to fix the railroads and I'm going to end the corruption. Most of these people go in because they're safe and they're going to be good on the talk shows on Sunday morning, but they don't really want to go in and they don't know how to go in and really make big changes in those agencies that can make waves and maybe cause problems with the president. So they get somebody safe. Ralph Reed used to describe those people. He said they were people who get the joke. And I get the joke, but I don't think it's funny. And I'm not safe. I am not safe. The vested interest, I'm not safe. My job is to keep you safe. And that's what I'm going to do. My dad, whenever we traveled, my father would take us to the Indian reservations, wherever we landed. We go, whether we were in Utah or New Mexico, go to Standing Rock or the Navajo reservation, or we go in upstate New York to the Mohawk reservation, all around the country. He would always, when we got to the airport, he would want to go there. And he'd take us there. He loved going to Appalachia. His favorite place in the world was Bedford-Stuyvesant, one of the poorest neighborhoods in Brooklyn. I was on the Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration on the board for 20 years. He would take us to Harlem. When we were kids, little kids, he would put us, or to Appalachia, to the white mining communities in Appalachia. He would put us in the back of a station wagon and he would drive us into Southeast Washington. And we would go to the playgrounds there and talk to people. And my father would say to us, when he came back one time from the Delta, he said, we were all at the dinner table when he came in, and he said, I was in a tar paper shack today. It was smaller than this dining room, and there were 2 families living there, and the children get 1 meal a day. And when you get older, I want you to help those people. And when we would go into Southeast Washington or Appalachia, he would say to us, these are your people. These are Kennedy people. He said, the other people, the big shots, the corporations, the millionaires don't need the Kennedys. They have lobbyists, they have PR firms, they have lawyers. And he said, these are your people, and these are the people you need to spend your life helping. And when I'm president, I'm going to be president for those people. We're going to really take back this country. You give me a piece of ground and a sword, and I am going to take back this country with your help, the help of all the homeless Republicans and Democrats and independents who are Americans first. Thank you all very much.
I just saw Dr. Robert Malone.
I'm not surprised.
Good old Stars and Stripes Forever. Glad he picked that one. Nothing more American than that.
It was a very American speech, very
Wasn't
middle
it, though?
class focused.
I liked what I heard. I liked what I saw. You know what I really like to see, though, Rick? More than anything? Lots of security around that man. See those big boys in the black suits? They look serious. Real serious. Good. That's what I like to see. Let's get a lot of security around this guy.
Wow.
Woo.
That was a powerful speech.
It certainly was. Wow, that's a knockout.
You know, Trump spends so much time speaking about himself, about what he's done and how he's a victim. But this was a speech that touched on a lot of the same issues, but he spoke about the issues.
That's right. And you know, when you talk about, you never hear Bobby whine about his lot in life, but if anybody could claim being a victim, he's been through a lot in his life, quite publicly, all in the public eye. He's lived his whole life under a microscope, born famous, and he never asked for any of that.
I found it interesting, you know, and smart, the way he simply acknowledges his shortcomings to kind of get out in front of it. That's a political tactic. Very, very smart strategy. And just poking fun at himself.
That's right. And that's the Bobby I know. I mean, that's the guy I've spent time with. Those are really hard things to talk about. But again, it's all out there anyway, because he lived his whole life in the public eye. His arrest record is public. I mean, everything he's ever done in his life made the headlines. He knew it was all going to come out sooner or later. So why not just put it out there up front?
Yeah, precisely. And you know, the gentleman that introduced him, I can't remember his name. Anyway, he used
Dennis Kucinich.
Yeah, he used a phrase that I've been, you know, it's been running around in my mind for the last couple of years. Just strength through peace.
Yes. You know, Dennis Kucinich, when he ran for president back in 2004, you might remember this. He proposed a Department of Peace. There was just, you know, an entire government division that was diplomatic, and its mission was to make world peace. And I thought, wow, I really like Dennis Kucinich, and I'm glad he's involved with the Kennedy campaign. Really involved, like literally answering emails and volunteering to help around the office. So he's dedicated, and that's great. I think the Democratic Party screwed Dennis Kucinich big time back in the 2004 primary season. He got the Tulsi Gabbard treatment back then. So he knows how it feels.
So he's using that, you know, in this way, I also see a parallel to what Trump has done with the Republican Party. This is the beginning of an attempt to take over the Democratic Party. And
take it back.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
we want our party back. I was a Democrat when I was a JFK kid from the age of 5, and I supported Ted Kennedy in 1980. When he challenged President Carter for the Democratic nomination. I've been a Kennedy kid all my life, and I'm still a big Kennedy kid.
See, and you're using that branding already in your language. You're a Kennedy Democrat, not just a Democrat, but a Kennedy Democrat.
I've been a Kennedy Democrat all my life.
He's rebranding the entire party, and he's attaching the family name to it, his name, but not just the name, the ideology, the values.
Yes. That's the whole reason I left the Democratic Party in 1996 was I'd been a Kennedy Democrat all my life. And those Kennedy values that the party always stood for, it didn't anymore. It was the Clinton era. It was the Clintons and all of their cronies and their ilk that sickened me. And I wanted to leave. And you know why? Because April 19th, on this day, 30 years ago, today, the US government, Bill Clinton, Janet Reno, the FBI, the ATF, the military, burned down a church with the parishioners inside for really no good reason at all. And they killed 70 people, and I think 16 of them were small children. A lot of women. Waco.
Yeah, Waco.
And then on this day 28 years ago, they blew up a federal building right here in my town where I sit right now in Oklahoma City. That was 2 years after Waco. And they said that Timothy McVeigh done it because he was pissed off about Waco. And that's why he chose April 19th. That was his revenge.
Well, I was thinking about how RFK Jr. is kind of bringing the party, and certainly his campaign occupies the middle ground, but it isn't politically, it isn't ideological middle ground. It's the moral middle ground. That is where he will bring people together and unify them through,
just like his dad.
yes, through values, through restoring a moral compass for the country. He talks about the homeless Republicans and the homeless Democrats. He'll reach out to those people. That's where he will find the strength. As he references the poor and the middle class, that's where he'll find his base of support, not through crazy QAnon type people so much, but through
They might vote for him too.
They probably will. They probably will, because he will stake his claim on the moral middle ground, not based on the left or the right. He's also, I think, recognizing that those old labels don't really apply anymore. And what the country really needs is a moral compass reset.
Preach. Keep going. You're on it. That's I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. He also, this is the thing too, and in this conversation that we had, a few weeks ago with Caleb and Tyler, our communist friends, right? When we're talking about the economy, RFK Jr. here alludes to that as well. And he really echoes my views on this too, because he talks about these big corporations escaping the laws that come with an actual free market. Yeah. By having great lobbyists who are able to manipulate or take advantage of the corporate crony capitalist system, which is really what we have in place. That isn't a free market. It is a form of capitalism, but I've always been a free market guy, and people use that word capitalism. And I think RFK is also sort of a free market guy, but he understands that this current system has been set up to allow abuse of the people, of the economy, of the country by giant corporations that have really been in bed with the government.
He's spent his whole career fighting that, fascist partnership between the corporate world and the world of government. That's what his entire career has been about. So
yeah,
he may not have political experience, but he's got a lot of experience fighting this corruption.
And his views on the environment, the way that he speaks about it also, I mean, it speaks to me because I believe in the environment, but I look at it more from a conservationist point of view, not from an extremist point of view. And he talked about reaching out and working with commercial and recreational fishermen, right? and talking about it in conservationist kinds of terms, and speaking about our natural resources as a common commodity, right?
Yeah.
And investing in preserving those and protecting those common resources for the greater good of the country. And by investing and protecting them, it's an investment in the future. I absolutely agree with that. Not with
Yeah.
radical, crazy ideas that really undermine the environment in many respects. So just so that corporations can call themselves green or put a green check mark beside their name, or use catchphrases like sustainability in their marketing campaigns. I mean, he's really, again, I think, speaking from the heart and with real moral conviction.
He's an old school kind of environmentalist. Like a Teddy Roosevelt kind of environmentalist.
Yeah.
I think Republicans, conservatives, of course, they want clean air, clean water. I
Right.
do. Bobby's focus in his environmental work for 35 years was keeping the water clean. That was his specific passion, always was the river keeper and water keeper organizations, you know?
You know what he might end up doing, and this is probably not his intention, but I think he could derail Trump's attempt to get the nomination to run again simply by calling Trump out through these speeches. And as he campaigns over the next 18 months to secure the nomination for the Democrats, he might take Trump out before Trump ever gets a chance to run, because he's drawing attention to Trump's failures as president already. And you talked about Trump's baggage. Well, he's putting it all on public display now. He's saying that Trump is to blame for the lockdowns, holding him accountable. He's calling out the collusion on even with even the social media companies that ended up banning Trump from Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. And in reality, the administration was colluding with the social media companies all along.
That's right.
And Trump had every opportunity to say no to the lockdowns. He was the president of the United States. And you and I have talked about this on this program before.
Yeah.
He could have done a lot to prevent all of the censorship and to stop it when he was president, and he did nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. Like a lot of things he said he was going to do and then actually did very little.
Yeah. Did
He
not.
talked a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Kennedy threw down the gauntlet in that speech. I mean, I didn't think he was going to go after Trump quite that hard straight out of the chutes, but yeah, he let her rip.
Yeah.
And I wonder how long Trump is going to keep ignoring him. Ever since Bobby got into the race, Trump hasn't even acknowledged his candidacy. He hasn't tweeted or truthed about him once yet. And after that speech, I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting any minute that notification from Donald Trump is going to come across my phone. And he's going to have a new nickname for Bobby Kennedy. But what nickname is he going to come up with that is going to insult Bobby? Trump's nicknames are always derogatory in some way, or insulting or mocking. But how do you mock that guy? I mean, Kennedy's going to be a tough opponent for Trump if we get to the general election. If by some miracle Bobby wins the Democratic Party nomination, Trump doesn't want to run against this guy. I wouldn't if I was Trump.
No.
I'm just saying that's a tough candidate. And I was thinking about this last night, Rick, because I'm a JFK historian, and I see if it were a Trump Kennedy matchup in November, I think it could be the closest election in history. If you thought the 2020 election was close, it could be closer than 2000 or 1960. Remember, President Kennedy just barely slid into office by a hair over Nixon. This will be a matchup very much like 1960 Kennedy versus Nixon. It's going to be fascinating. This race got real interesting today, don't you think?
Oh, yes, it certainly did.
Man.
Yeah. I have to say, though, Kennedy has a a big mountain to climb. Just looking at what happened here today, he needs to polish things up. He needs to get his technical act together, get those video feeds working better. That's
What happened
imperative,
there?
right?
Yeah.
I don't know. That tells me that he needs more help. He needs
help.
more money. He needs more volunteers. He needs a bit, maybe a little better team around him. That was an historic speech that really probably isn't getting as much traction right now as it deserves, simply because there were technical problems with his feed coming through his own website. It's so critical in an information age, a digital age, that they get that all ironed out.
Especially when you know the mainstream media is not covering it. Like while he was speaking, I stepped out of the room for a few minutes, Rick, because I was just curious. Like I had to go turn on the TV and flip through the news channels.
Right.
Nobody was taking that speech live.
No.
Fox wasn't taking it. CNN wasn't taking it. MSNBC sure as hell wasn't taking that speech.
That's right.
Right? ABC. No, I mean, back when his father announced, for example, all of the major networks took that whole thing live. You know, I just watched last night. I watched CBS News's coverage in 1968. They gave it an hour of primetime coverage with Walter Cronkite. Right. On the CBS, flagship network. And not one, not even CBSN or one of those offshoot networks today was carrying this speech, this historic speech, which even if you don't like Bobby Kennedy, you have to say that's newsworthy, that the son of assassinated Senator Robert Kennedy, the nephew of President Kennedy, is announcing he's running for president. I would think every network would be taking that live.
Yeah. You'd think
maybe
so.
not in its entirety. It was a long speech, but to air a substantial portion of it and to make a big television event of that, I find that extremely newsworthy.
Yes, I mean, it is a different time. You have social media. There can be coverage online, but even here, like I searched online, and we were one of the very few carrying the speech.
Yeah, it doesn't
and they were,
surprise me.
I can tell you, they were trying to suppress us for sure. They had other
I bet
feeds
YouTube
up.
was.
Yep. Oh yeah, YouTube absolutely trying to kill us.
Isn't it interesting? They demonetized us just yesterday, like the day ahead of the speech.
Well, I don't know. I don't want to be a conspiracy
I
theorist.
don't know.
Yeah, I just, but yeah, even online, not anywhere near the coverage that it deserves.
Absolutely.
So that's the other challenge you will have. But that's the case with anyone who is considered to be a long shot, who isn't part of, the machinery, with the Democrat Party or the Republicans. You have to work 10 times harder to get the attention focused on you. It can be done, though.
He's good at getting attention, but it seems to be negative attention in the last 3 years. I mean, it's important to remember that for most of Bobby's life and career, the media fawned over him. He's used to reporters falling at his feet and kissing his ass. I mean, if your last name is Kennedy, the media usually loves you. And when he was talking about left issues like environmentalism, the media adored him. He was always on CNN. He was a frequent guest on all of the networks, right? Yeah. And once he started talking about COVID and vaccines, he was canceled. He got canceled.
But I thought today, thank God he is talking about it, because regardless of the outcome, he is taking that issue, the lockdowns, the harms that have been done, and he's pushing that right out in front and putting it right in the face of the mainstream media, saying, there it is, deal with it.
They're going to have to deal with it. They have to deal with him now. He's an actual candidate. I mean, what are they going to do? Just pretend he's not running for president? Is everyone just going to ignore the elephant in the room?
Yep.
I mean, Biden has acknowledged him. Trump hasn't acknowledged him. The media is pretending he's not running.
Yep. And he's
But
bringing all these issues, the effects of the lockdowns, the increased suicide rates, the impact that it's had, especially on poorer demographics. And he's also focusing on people's rights. He's drawing attention to what he's describing as the war on the poor and the middle class, which is obvious. It's clear when you look at the facts.
Oh yeah. Ask anybody you know who's not well off how they're doing.
Yeah.
Ask them, especially here in the States if people are on food stamps. And I was so glad to see him talk about his friend who's just had his food stamps cut to $25 a month.
Yeah.
It's true. Everybody, and we have more people on food stamps in the last 3 years than ever in American history. A lot of people got on the food stamp program for the first time during the pandemic, and their situation didn't improve sufficiently to be able to get off food stamps. They're still poor, and they're poorer than ever, while the cost of groceries and the cost of living and inflation is, it's through the roof. And I'm so glad he talked about that.
And back to the deep state, talking about the lettered agencies. Trump in his speeches, he's always complaining, oh, they spied on me and they did this and they did that. And well, what have you done about it? You were the president. Why didn't you do something about it? He says he's the, RFK Jr. says he knows how to fix it. I think he probably does know how to fix it. He spent so much time around the system. He knows the system. His family has been affected so directly by the CIA. I think he has motivation to fix the problem too.
No one has greater motivation to finish what President Kennedy started. And I love that he mentioned what Kennedy said after the Bay of Pigs, that he wanted to smash the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the four winds.
Yeah.
No one else is going to do that. Only Robert Kennedy would do that.
The other thing is he talked about vaccines, autism.
Yes.
He wants to do something about it. If you go back and look at Trump, when he came down the escalator around that time, even back then, he was talking about autism, but never did anything about it. That's another issue. And he shut up about it after a little while. Something happened in there to coerce him or convince Trump. He's just stopped talking about that issue. But early on, that was something he said he wanted to do something about. And RFK Jr., he's bringing it up here. But again, I think he means it.
No, I know he does. I mean, he truly puts his money where his mouth is. He has sued so many big pharma companies, so many. There's no way you could count them all over a 25-year period or longer.
And then perhaps the biggest issue facing us at the moment, the war in Ukraine, he certainly framed that in the way that he needs to as a candidate, saying, that the American people are good people, that he thinks that the U.S. originally went into Ukraine for, at least people were told they were there for the right reasons, which was humanitarian. But then raising the all-important questions, what is the true objective? And I mean, it was so clear to me. I said it's the real objective here is in the long term is regime change in Russia. And then Biden has actually come out. Biden came out about a month after I said that, and other people were suggesting it too. And then Biden comes out and actually says it because he's either an idiot or
it just slipped out.
Oops.
Oops, the truth fell out of my mouth.
Oops. So he's raising the questions. As a candidate, I can see that he needed to frame it in a particular way, and he achieved that today. And I think again, his objective in the end is pro-America. His solution, I guess, is what I'm getting at, is to get out of there, but to do it in a way that is still pro-American and allows America and the United States to save face, if you will, for having gone in there, I think for the wrong reasons.
I thought his handling of that was very delicate in
Yes.
that he was sensitive to both sides.
Yeah.
I thought, it was interesting how he pointed out that we're even so divided on that issue as Americans that, either everyone's a Nazi in Ukraine or everyone in Russia is somehow controlled by Vladimir Putin. The evil
as a
Vladimir Putin.
politician, you have to be pragmatic. You have to be practical. He can't come out and use the kind of language that we've
we
used
do?
on this show. He couldn't say those things.
Can't be
right?
that candid.
That's
Yeah.
right. So
And he's got a son who's fought over there. I mean, his son
Right.
Connor has done a tour of duty on the battlefield, and that's incredibly personal. I know his son strongly supports the war in Ukraine, or
Yeah.
thinks. I guess his son is probably young and naive or idealistic, and thinks that we're there for all good reasons. And
the one thing I noticed about his speech, and he does this a lot. He's very good with facts. He's good with the stats. He's good at throwing out the dollar figures and showing people exactly what the situation is. However, what Trump is good at is pushing people's emotional buttons, and a lot of some politicians are very good at that. I think if he wants to be successful, if he wants to win, he will need to humanize his speeches a little bit more and tell stories that people can relate to on a human level. Because these stats that he's throwing around, he's very good at it and it is pretty effective, but he also needs to inject human storytelling so that he can bring it down to a one-on-one level for people, and that will propel him to the presidency. I think he needs somebody to help him with his speech writing just a little bit to get that human element in there. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, I do. And I was just going to say something that probably jumped out at you, Rick, because you've covered so many political speeches. No teleprompter. Do you notice that?
Yes.
No teleprompter. In fact, I didn't even see a written speech on the podium. Maybe he had some notes or something, but you could tell that was not scripted.
It
was like he was ad-libbing. Have you ever in your life seen a presidential candidate make their announcement that they're running for president without a really finely, carefully scripted written speech? I have not.
That's why he is gonna mop the floor with his opponents during any debates.
Right. He doesn't need a script. He doesn't need a teleprompter. He just came out there and spoke from the heart. Now, I've heard Bobby give a lot of speeches over the years, and I heard bits and pieces of some of his other speeches in that one. So it's just stuff that he's committed to memory over the years. But yeah, there was just something so spontaneous about it, and no teleprompter, no script. It was just from the heart.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Just that's pretty remarkable for any political candidate. You never see that.
Yeah. And
I'd like to see more of that.
And his references to the economy. I mean, at this point, with the way money has been printed, the way the economy has been handled, the way that it's all inflationary, it's all debt-based. I mean, who the hell cares anymore? Whether you're left or you're right, that the place is bankrupt practically. So who could do any worse anyway? But his approach, I mean, he's absolutely right on the money when he's talking about the economy, because it's all corporate based. It's all about the military industrial complex, and it has gutted the middle class. So I absolutely see the appeal to the poor and the middle class and the homeless Republicans and the homeless Democrats. And he's just being upfront about it again.
I felt that. I think a lot of people out there felt that. There was a very emotional speech. There were a few times that sent a shiver down my spine. I didn't expect him to talk about the night his father died and the funeral train. That's guy. That had to be tough. He doesn't usually talk about that in his speeches, like ever. Doesn't talk about it in interviews. It's like he just came out there and put it all on the table. He just said, "Here I am. This is really me." And he even said at the end, "I'm not your typical candidate. I'm not
Yeah.
not very polished. I've got a past." Incredible honesty, and isn't that refreshing?
Yeah, actually very refreshing, and again strategically smart. He's getting out in front of it because he knows the media is coming for him. His political opponents coming for him through the media. So it's
They
wise.
already are. The hit pieces are already out there.
Yeah.
Just started coming out in a flood this week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of that, what was that strange moment with the evacuation alarm in the building? That was
couldn't really hear exactly what it was. It must have been a fire alarm or
sound like a fire alarm. And they were saying you had to evacuate the building. And I thought, did somebody just do one of those fake SWAT calls? Was that a swatting incident? I like how he said, "Nice try."
Yeah.
At the end. Nice try.
Yeah. So very, very exciting stuff. It adds a lot of color to the race, and we'll see if the big blue Democratic machine will allow this to happen.
Man, they're going to try and roll over him like a semi truck.
Yeah. Well, he's calling for a restoration of a government of, by, and for the people. And I think in this case, it truly is up to the people. If people want this, they will need to get behind him and support him.
It was interesting. I was watching the chat during his speech. And I know we have a lot of Trump voters here, a lot of Trump supporters, but they really like him too.
Yeah.
If it would be a tough call for me right now, if I was a devoted Trump voter, I might be feeling kind of torn between Trump and Kennedy. I might be giving Bobby some thought. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be a Trump voter right now trying to make that decision.
Well, at the moment, they don't need to. He just needs to secure that nomination to be the Democrat candidate, right?
Yep.
Then the tougher decision might come later. We shall see.
There was something else he said, speaking on issues of war and peace. I liked how he talked about closing the bases overseas. That's, I'm a Ron Paul gal, and that's something that Ron Paul's been saying his entire career. And if we had been fortunate enough to elect a President Paul, we would have closed those bases around the world decades ago.
Yeah.
Right. So Bobby wants to finish what Dr. Paul started as well. Not just get us out of the wars, but to bring our troops home, like from everywhere.
What he did today was he exposed the true cost of having all those military bases around the world, the true cost of this imperialist policy, foreign policy, the true cost of it in terms of, the expansionary monetary policies necessary to support all of that. All that has really been going on for decades and decades is kind of a protection racket that the United States has been running for other countries, saying, we'll put military bases here to protect you, and then financing it with debt. Just keep running up the credit card, keep running it up and buying more jets and tanks and ships and guns, and just it makes it look like there's prosperity, but they're really just cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching on the credit card, doing all of this on the backs of future generations. And not only that, but using up all this goodwill around the world, really destroying the U.S. reputation, because now they're viewed as this authoritarian, I would say even fascistic,
belligerent,
arrogant, who made you the world policeman,
We did. We made ourselves the world's policemen.
Exactly. And with no actual regard for international rule of law. I mean, you want to talk about common law, natural law, international law, there's no regard for it. And we talked about that yesterday. John Mark Dugan and I discussed that, where they're just seizing the assets of anyone who's Russian just because, which is not proper. That's not honoring the rule of law, any kind of law. That's just the U.S. saying, I think we're going to take that guy's boat. Because why? Oh, he's Russian. That's not a crime. And they've done that with other countries too. You know, with countries like Iran, they'll seize a ship with oil on it and just take it. That's
because this piece of paper says so.
Right. Because
we passed a law saying we can just take your stuff.
Yeah.
Like asset forfeiture laws here in the United States that John Mark was talking about. Yep. Like if you're driving down the road and you get pulled over and you got a bunch of cash with you or something else the cops might like that sure is a nice car you got there. It's, you know, that's how it works. It's legal. It's legal for them to rob you like that.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many ways that we're getting robbed. Right. I just paid my taxes. We just had tax day. That hurt. As a self-employed person, I pay greater than 30% tax.
Wow.
And what am I getting from my tax dollars, Rick? All of our programs, our services are being cut back, and our money's going to Ukraine. It was so hard to write that tax check this year.
Yeah. I
can't, these last 2 years supporting this war in Ukraine, I know that that's money I'll never see again, and it's going to support a war that I don't want to be involved in, that I'm very much opposed to. And, you know, makes you want to start a tax protest to end the war.
In fact, we're getting that because it isn't just the media lies, the government lies that undermine public trust in the institutions and government, and all of these institutions that have been built up over time. It's not just the lies, it's the taxation, and it's the squandering of the money, and it's the perpetual wars. Those are also the things that, and the disregard for the rule of law, both internationally and domestically, actually, that undermine the trust in those institutions as well. So there you have it. That's why people don't want to pay their taxes sometimes. That's because they don't feel that their money is being properly utilized.
I don't want to support a government that doesn't support me. And I have not felt once since Joe Biden took office that he gave a damn about anybody out here who's struggling. All he's done since he came to office is cut back essential services and needs for the poor.
Well,
and the unemployed.
How much was it? 113 billion for the war in Ukraine.
So far, I do believe that's where we're at now, is 113 billion. Yeah. And yet I've got people sleeping under every bridge here in my city, here in the heartland. You know, we've got homeless people everywhere. We don't have enough shelters for them. And nobody seems interested in building new housing to, you know, take care of our people.
These are all signs of a country, a nation collapsing.
Yes. Yeah. It looks to me a lot like those last years of the Soviet Union. And that scares the crap out of me.
Yeah.
And
with the dollar now, I think, on the verge of collapse, because it's no longer going to be the world reserve currency, the U.S. has lost its position of prominence in the world. It's no longer a unipolar reality geopolitically.
You know, something else I really liked what he said about China. You know, we've been doing everything that's antithetical to growth. We've been doing degrowth. Meanwhile, everything, we're out there bombing the world, right? We're destroying cities, destroying infrastructure all around the world. And China builds it. That's what they do. And they do it very, very well. And that's what we used to do. We used to be really good at that. I thought that was really good to hear. That I hope that he'll, come up with a sort of a works progress administration type program. I've been saying for a few years that America needs another FDR. Boy, do we need another FDR. So we might just get another FDR and another JFK. and maybe a little RFK in there too. I mean, you could have all of those things. And to Democrats, to old school Democrats, those who loved FDR and loved Kennedy, that's music to their ears. They've been waiting a lifetime for this moment.
Well, I think back to, the last round when Biden was nominated, and you had people like Tulsi Gabbard in there, Bernie Sanders, and they were just kind of pushed to the side. Tulsi Gabbard ends up leaving the party. But how about this one? How about an RFK Jr. Tulsi Gabbard ticket?
Ooh, man, now you're talking. I love it. Believe me, I'm dreaming about that ticket. Man, that'd be unstoppable. And it would be a good unity ticket because she also appeals to a lot of conservatives and and independents. I think that could be a winning ticket.
Oh yeah.
So have you heard Roger Stone's big idea?
No, what are you talking about?
Roger Stone has been talking about this on his podcast, The Stone Zone, recently, last week or so. And I think it's because he's scared of Kennedy going up against Trump. I don't think he wants Trump to run against Kennedy. And you know what? I don't blame him. So he wants to have a unity ticket of Trump and Kennedy. And he's serious. He's very serious. What do you think about that?
It had crossed my mind already today.
No kidding.
But I was like, how could they even make that happen? That's not gonna happen.
I don't think party rules will permit that, unless Bobby changed his registration and left the Democratic Party to join the Republican Party. He would literally have to become a Republican because otherwise the party wouldn't allow that. They wouldn't allow someone of an opposing party.
But do you really think he wants to be Trump's vice president? Or
no?
Would Trump would never be his vice president?
Well, probably after that speech, I don't think Trump's going to make the offer.
No.
Bobby hit him pretty hard there.
So I can't see it happening. But I could see an RFK Jr. Tulsi Gabbard ticket.
Boy,
I could see that.
I sure could. That's a ticket I could fall in love with right there. Yeah. I think a lot of us would be excited about that.
Yeah. And again, it would extend an olive branch to people across the political spectrum.
That's what we need.
Very much
we really
so.
need that.
Yeah.
I was looking at Bobby's website, this new website, Kennedy24.com. And there's a page called Peace. It's really good. I hope you'll go take a look at it, guys. I'm just going to read you a little paragraph of what he writes here. He says, as John Quincy Adams wrote, Americans go not abroad in search of monsters to destroy. Robert F. Kennedy will revive a lost thread of American foreign policy thinking, the one championed by his uncle, John F. Kennedy, who, over his 1,000 days in office, had become a firm anti-imperialist. He wanted to exit Vietnam. He defied the Joint Chiefs of Staff and refused to bomb Cuba, thus saving us from nuclear Armageddon. He wanted to reverse the imperialistic policies of Truman and Eisenhower, rein in the CIA, and support freedom movements around the world. He wanted to revive Roosevelt's impulse to dissolve the British Empire rather than take it over. John F. Kennedy's vision was tragically cut short by an assassin's bullet. But now we have another chance. The country is ailing, yes, but underneath there is vitality still. America is a land rich in resources, creativity, and intelligence. We just need to get serious about healing our society to become strong again from the inside. America was once an inspiration to the world, a beacon of freedom and democracy. Our priority in this campaign will be nothing less than to restore our moral leadership. We will lead by example. When a warlike imperial nation disarms of its own accord, it sets a template for peace everywhere. It is not too late for us to voluntarily let go of empire and serve peace instead as a strong and healthy nation. Period. How do you argue with that? What's Trump going to say to that? Or what's Biden going to say to that? If Bobby gets a chance to say that on a debate stage, how do you respond? No, I like these endless wars. This is good. We have to keep doing this till the 12th of never because it's worked out so well. I mean, why not just keep doing it? No, Bobby just destroyed that whole argument in those 2 paragraphs.
Yes. Yeah.
Everybody, I think, can agree with that unless they work for the national security state or the military industrial complex. Those are the only guys who aren't going to like it. And you know who's going to like that best of all? Our troops. Our troops will be overjoyed to have their bases closed overseas so they can just go home.
Right.
Right? They don't really want to be there. Most of them just don't even understand why. Why are we here? What is our mission?
Like I say, he has a big mountain to climb. He needs to get the nomination, then he needs to get elected, and then if he is elected president, everyone needs to pray that it isn't too late.
I have a friend who just texted me from the room there in Boston, Matthew Tower, who is my co-host on a weekly Twitter space meeting that we do for the RFK Jr. campaign. Campaign supporters get together, we talk, we brainstorm, we talk about polls and strategy and all that good stuff. And he's my co-host. He's in Boston today. Been sending me pictures and stuff, but he just texted me and said that speech was political nirvana. I like that. Pretty good description. Political nirvana. 2 words.
Yeah. With that, it is approaching 3:00 now, 2:51 p.m.
That was a long speech. I thought this was going to be, 20 minutes and he's done.
Yeah,
My
so
God,
too.
did he talk for 2 hours plus? That was a Trump kind of long, Trump can go and go and go. That was like a Trump length speech.
It was.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that. I know I did. Pretty amazing.
Yeah. We'll have more to talk about. More to say about it probably tonight when I come back at 6 p.m.
Yeah, you need an hour break, right? Get a little break here.
That's about it.
I will not be joining you this evening. I got some stuff I got to do, but thanks for having me on today. It was a pleasure covering this with you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Lori, as always. It's great to have you here, and I appreciate you and your insight, your depth of knowledge.
Appreciate you, my man. Appreciate you guys. Take care, Mavericks. Have a great night.
All right, and I'll see all you Mavericks back here at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.